Alright guys, welcome back. We've had some issues with the servers. I mean, I think Blizzard have sorted it out now, and we should have the game coming up for you very soon, like almost instantly. And it looks like these guys are ready to battle, so let's not waste any time and let's just go straight into the game. So it looks like the Mulligans are going to be coming down here. The Patron Warrior is going to be coming from Crane, and Hallmark he's going to be starting off with what looks like a tempo mage to me.
Yeah, it's really. What do you think about this matchup? Because this definitely looks like Patron, as you said, and you know it can be really strange. Tempo Mage is normally a deck that really pushes a lot, really quickly and like as the name suggests, gains tempo. But the Patron Warrior, Warrior in general, with Armor Smith, Frothing Berserker, and Patrons themselves, a lot of the like the odd damage from something like Arcane Missiles and your Flame Waker is going to probably cause you more problems than it'll solve.
Well, that's it. At some point, the Tempo Mage is going to get to a point where it can't do enough. Like the Arcane Missiles and the Flame Waker are just going to create more patrons. But, of course, the Patron Warrior has to find that card first. Now, this is the non-Warsong version, so if anyone watching is not familiar with this deck, it plays very similar, just without the charge, really.
Yeah, I mean, it plays almost the same. It has a few different win conditions if it's running something like Grom, but in general, it just wants to get the board and just play for board control. And then if you drop a Frothing down, yes, it's not going to charge instantly and do tons of damage, but it has to be answered by your opponent, or then you can do the next turn of Whirlwinds or Patrons and both, really buffing that damage and hitting big. So we're going to see a Flame Cannon come out to get rid of the Armor Smith, but although that's obviously a good play for Hallmark, it's still a problem that needs to be used to get rid of a Frothing or maybe a Patron in one hit without proccing any more Patrons.
And Tempo Frothing's going to come down here. Like you said, this card needs to be dealt with, regardless if it doesn't have charge. And Tempo Frothing was something that became quite popular against Druids and other decks that rely on kind of an early game presence. So it just helps fight for the board. Your Flame Waker is definitely going to be utilized here. Probably the Unstable Portal. Let's see what Hallmark finds. This is where Tempo Mage gets a bit wacky. Oh, wow.
Okay. So there's Alex Straza from the Portal, which might actually help him maybe stay out of reach, because a burst turn from a Patron Warrior now is less unpredictable than it is beforehand. So, it's a bit more obvious because the minions on the board are the only ones that can attack, right? So he can sort of maybe a sort of lifesaver, or he might just slam it down on turn 6 anyway if he gets to that point. But he has pushed the Warrior to 19 already. We'll just see where Crane actually wants to put this Frothing Berserker. But the scary part about Tempo Mage is the second Unstable Portal you see that cast from your opponent, it could be anything.
And Alex Straza is something I haven't actually seen from Portal before. And playing at 8-8 on 6 with a Tempo Mage might just be enough to help him close out against Crane, because he might not have an Execute. Execute is one of the only ways they can, one of the only resources they have as hard removal. Shield Slam not really finding its place in these decks anymore.
Yeah, and we are going to see this Patron turn, which is he threw it down just in case the trap, or the secret, sorry, was Mirror Entity, but this is a duplicate, which is interesting. That's more of a flare pick, I would say, in Tempo Mage. It's not a common pick.
It was an interesting discussion between some pro players I had, that they said with secrets, when it goes to Mage and Hunter, it's very good to kind of mix them up, because if your secrets are too predictable, it's easy to play around them. If you know they have 2 freezing traps, you know they have 2 Mirror Entities, you have no surprise, right?
Yeah, and there's the big turn. Hallmark's dropped down Alex Straza on turn 6, which Crane almost certainly was not expecting, and now Crane has to respond, because with the Shredder just hitting face, suddenly he's on 11 health, but this is the tipping point, really. If Crane can stabilize, he's got a much better chance, or a really solid chance, of taking his first game. Although on Hallmark's side, he does have Arcane Intellect, so it's not like he's out of cards. He can cycle to sort of slightly refill his hand, but the rest of his cards aren't too amazing. The Mad Scientist and the Mana Worm. Is he going to give him a duplicated Alex Straza? No, because the Shredder's going to die first.
So yeah, Shredder's going to get duplicated. Giving him 2 Alexes wouldn't be the best move. But giving him 2 Shredders
still isn't fantastic, is it?
Exactly. So he actually is going to be able to deal with the board. And look at this. No Warsong Commander. Still gains a lot of life from the Armor Smith and still dominates the board. Needed a Flame Strike from this Tempo Mage to really deal with these Patron Warriors.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see just an armor up here from the he going to play the Acolyte? Okay. I imagine he's going to run into the 2-3 just to clear it with the 3-2 Patron. Oh, he does choose to armor up. I think the Acolyte doesn't do too much now because he already has the Patrons and the Armorsmith on board. That's a really strong board. The only thing you're worried about is turn 7 Flame Strike. But, you know, you can't, if you play around that, then he's in some big trouble. So he's just armored up. He's on 21 life with this Armorsmith down and all those Patrons. So suddenly, he's at a reasonable life total. He has Death's Bite in hand, no Mission Inventor for some Cycle, Acolyte paying for some more Cycle. But Hallmark has 2 Shredders still, so that's not terrible, but it's a little bit slow when you're looking at how much damage is on the board.
Oh, for sure. He's Hallmark's got a lot to deal with here, because even if he does just play a Shredder, I mean, they just start trading. If another whirlwind effect comes down, Hallmark could potentially be out of the game because he'll never be able to clear enough Patrons, especially without a Flame Strike or any Frost Bolts. As soon as his Death Spike comes down, clears up the Shredder, he may be able to generate another Patron from the minion that's spawned.
And the Unstable Ghoul as well.
Ghoul, another whirlwind effect. It might just be infinite Patrons for the rest of the game unless the Flame Strike comes down.
Just to point out, I'm kind of glad our point was slightly backed up here in that the lesser known players, you know, there's a higher potential of run something a bit different in the deck. So we've seen Duplicate, pretty valid though, because Tempo Mage can run a little dry on cards mid to late game, which is nice, gives you 2 more cards. But also there's the Arcane Blast, which is a little bit of an interesting one, isn't it?
Well, Arcane Blast has picked up more popularity since the NA regionals. Players like Jab were testing it out, and he, I think Hotform may have ran it as well. It kind of takes over the mirror image. And it's a very powerful card for a Tempo Mage because, like, a turn 1 removal of, say, a Knife Juggler or something against some decks could be all it needs. But it looks like Crane going on the offensive. You're setting up these whirlwind effects ready to be able to generate tons of health and maybe find a lethal.
Yeah, and this is the benefit Armorsmith gives you, especially in this deck. If you can put Armorsmith and an AoE behind Patrons, you can go offensive. What do you care? Because he almost has to. He probably doesn't have a silence for the Ghoul, then still has to clear the Armorsmith and the Patrons, and all it's doing is putting the Warrior further out of range of the Mage.
So Arcane Blast is his own Shredder here, I think. Yep, this is Doomsayer comes
down.
Nope. And that's going to be a
first game.
So Crane taking the first win here, 1-0 ahead with the Patron Warrior, which we spoke about earlier, which he's kind of a specialist at. He's put a lot of work and time in that deck, and even after the nerfs now, he still believes it's a competent deck. And well,
we can't really argue, can we?
Can't argue with that result there.
That was only one game, but even with something as powerful as an Alex Strasser on an 8-8 on turn 6 that your opponent isn't expecting and didn't particularly have an answer for, if there was just an execute in hand, then it's like, well, yeah, it doesn't really matter what you play to a large extent because it can just be got rid of so quickly. But being able to just clear it with Patrons, keep his Patrons, have the Armorsmith on the board, and just push him straight out of range. I do think Hallmark plays best there. There's not really much he could have done at that point, but that's just the power of, you know, the Patrons on the board and keeping that board control without a Flame Strike that some Tempo Mages still don't actually run. You've got no chance, and even with the Flame Strike, you would have been heavily reliant on those 2 Shredders to get some work done. I
mean, that Patron turn is basically what closed out the game for him, and it was from there he couldn't fight back. Flame Waker and stuff like becomes a liability. But I think the one thing Hallmark did have to face is a world-class Patron player.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't feel too bad about that loss. You know, if you know Crane, if you know his reputation, it was his best deck. So now moving forward, he gets a Mage Mirror, and Crane's rocking the Freeze Mage, which is a deck that's regained popularity recently.
Yeah, definitely. And Freeze Mage, what do you think about this matchup actually, Aqua? Like, Freeze Mage versus Tempo Mage. I think Tempo Mage has to have a really explosive start to be able to take this game, because Freeze Mage is so good at just stalling out the game and taking its time and then just finishing you off at the very end with cards like Pyroblast, its own Alex Strasser. You know, maybe Crane can get some justice there and play his own Alex Strasser. It's going to be 9 mana, but still.
Yeah, no, you're definitely correct there. Tempo Mage needs that early pressure, which is just too much for the Freeze Mage to deal with. He hasn't drawn enough cards, he hasn't found enough AoE removal, and you just bully them out of the mid-game, in the early game, into the mid-game, and just win with those Fireballs and Frost Bolts. But if a Freeze Mage can stabilize within the first 5 to 6 turns, it can be very hard for the Tempo Mage to come back. And speaking of an early aggressive start, that is a beautiful hand for Hallmark.
Yeah, that's almost exactly what he needed. But on Crane's side, he has Mad Scientist, Doomsayer. The two Blizzards are a little bit slow. Going to be really useful a bit later on if the game goes on that long. But you know, he could actually just see like maybe a turn 2 Doomsayer, just to, you know, slow him down and stop him playing any more minions on the board, because there's no real good way for a mage to take out a Doomsayer that early on. He is just going to wait and drop the Scientist, get those secrets down. What do you hope for from a Scientist first? You kind of do you just want the ice block down?
Just
so
get the
there?
ice barrier.
Oh, okay.
I think so. I
Yeah.
mean, it's going to thin your deck for one. Ice block is not going to be needed for another 3 to 4 turns. Frostbolt's a great pickup here, so you can actually just run that into it and ping, and then he has a Frostbolt for later. You could Frostbolt the Mana Worm and trade it to Mad Scientist, but the thing is, he might as well go for the 2 for 1 here, so kind of force a ping or a Flame Waker response from Hallmark, looking to kind of get more value from the Mad Scientist. I like Cold Ones and Frostbolt here.
Yeah, and we can see Hallmark, so this is a nice Flame Waker hand. He has Coin, which we're going to see. He can either Missiles, which we're probably going to see because there's only 1 minion on the board. Already the Scientist is gone, and the secret is in fact Ice Barrier, so we got the one he wanted there. But that's still a lot of damage for turn 3. He's going to proc the Ice Barrier with the Scientist and just start hacking away at that armor. And we can see that Crane doesn't have a second Ice Barrier in hand, so it's not like he can just reload up on that.
So this is where Doomsayer might come in. I mean, you could Frostbolt the Flame Waker. I could just Frostbolt ping, actually. I would just Frostbolt ping the Flame Waker here. Doomsayer can find a lot more value later. I mean, the Flame Waker is the biggest threat here. You're still on 29 life. You've just finished your deck for 1 Ice Barrier. You've got Acolyte Ping next turn, and then you've got Blizzard to follow up when he builds up. So, for me, I think Crane is just in the driver's seat here.
Yeah, this is getting into a real problem for Hallmark. He's running low on cards. He has just drawn another Flame Waker, but you know, we can see Crane's got the Fireball, and he's got all the AoE he needs for the next few turns once he hits turn 6. The Doomsay's pretty nice. Maybe a Frost Nova would be okay, or, you know, Cone of Cold kind of fills that role for next turn. He can Cone of Cold Doomsay if he feels he needs to.
Yeah, I think the ping's fine here. He can be super patient now because he slowed down the Tempo Mage so much. I mean, Shredder's definitely going to help him build some more pressure, but with back-to-back Blizzards and Doomsayer and a Coda Cold,
yeah,
like, he's just going to be able to keep removing the board unless Hallmark finds some crucial kind of endgame cards like the Antonidas or the Dr. Boom. Oh, and Morrison as well, so it's just looking so good for Crane.
Yeah, the only problem here is if he, for example, goes with Cone of Cold Doomsayer at this point, then, you know, you're in Fireball ping range because of 6 mana, so that might be a consideration that Crane has to take here, and instead maybe go for a Blizzard, kills off the Scientist and stalls the 2 minions that are on the board, and then maybe you can Blizzard again next turn if he feels like it. But I think knowing that you're on the exact mana that Fireball ping just deals with Doomsayer, it's a little bit risky to go for that out.
The thing with the Blizzard as well, if Hallmark doesn't draw a minion, he may feel that he needs to Fireball his base just to get additional value from the Flame Waker, and this secret.
Oh, here we go. How good is his portals? You got Alexstrasza onto Mana Addict. Oh, okay.
So what secret is this then? Is
The
it
secret is Duplicate.
So the Flame Waker was actually played before the Shredder, if I'm not correct. So another Blizzard can actually duplicate the Shredder.
Yeah.
The Flame Waker, sorry.
Yeah.
So that could actually become a little bit of a problem. But actually goes for the ping first, knowing as it might be a duplicate, not wanting to give the Shredder, and that's a very good read from Crane there.
Yeah, the 2 Shredders are going to be nice, but I think Crane's swiftly getting to the point where he doesn't care about them anymore, because by the time the Shredders actually get going and start pushing damage, it's not like Hallmark can play 2 Shredders next turn. He can only play 1. So, you know, he might be pretty confident he can maybe squeeze in an Emperor next turn, or maybe even just a Blizzard to actually clear up all the board except for the Shredder.
But look how this lines up now. Blizzard into ping will clear the Mana Addict or the Shredder. So he actually lined up that Cone of Cold really nicely to play into this turn where he has an opportunity to clear at least most of the board. And he could just actually pop the Shredder here, or he could leave the Shredder frozen and deal with it later. It's just looking really good for Crane.
Yeah, one of the only problems is that Hallmark still has some juice left. He still has another Shredder to play. Something's going to come out of this Shredder that's already on the board. We can see he does have Fireball, and maybe even the Flame Cannon's going to come in. He can Flame Cannon, Arcane Blast. That'll be 6. Flame Cannon, Arcane Blast, ping? Oh, and he has Frostball now as well. He's got a lot of burn.
This is a very heads-up play here from Crane. So what he's done here, he's put the Doomsayer down, not only just to kill the Shredder, but so he can play Forson next turn. He's trying to set up a the clearest board he can make with a situation, so he can Forson. If a Fireball comes down, that's one Fireball less to his face, so he just reduces the damage on his hero, so it's looking pretty good.
Yeah, and the Hallmark decided to just drop the Shredder and take whatever the take the RNG. He seemed to be riding off the Alex Strasser pull from the portal in the last game and just hoping it's enough. It's not a terrible play, because when your opponent plays a Doomsayer and then afterwards you still have 2 minions, it's not too terrible at all. Let's see what pops out the Shredders, which is pretty vital. 2-3 and a 1-2, that's not really what he wanted to see, and this is as safe as an Emperor's going to get. And the fact that he can put Ice Block as well, I think that turn's just sealed the game. Crane's going to feel super comfortable. He has Antonidas for 6 next turn, 2 Fireballs at 3 mana, and a 0 mana Ice Lance. So, I mean, this is just nuts.
So he can't actually pop the block this turn. He's missing 3 damage, if I'm correct. So, again, as long as that Ice Block stays up, Crane is just going to feel super safe. He just called the Forson, which is nice. But now, Crane can kind of go on the aggressive himself. One thing that could kind of fall short for Crane here is if he doesn't find a way to deal some of these minions. But I'd be surprised if we don't see an Antonidas Fireball, maybe an Ice Lance on the Azure Drake, and start putting pressure on Hallmark instead of waiting for that Alex.
Yeah, so this is one where you see how experienced the player is at this kind of deck, because this isn't an easy situation for the Freeze Mage for Crane. This is a bit tricky. You need to know how to play it to take this one out, because you're still in a little bit of danger. He does do the safe play, regenerates the 2 Fireballs into his hand, and there's another Drake, which is really scary because of the the spell power, as he draws the Frostbolt from it.
So you can actually pop the block here. So we were talking about how Hallmark was really behind. Drawn into these burn spells much later on has actually put him quite far ahead. So
no, he'll be a little bit off because he can't cast both, right? Just does Fireball.
Oh yeah, for sure.
A little bit off with mana.
My bad.
But he can clear the Antonidas, which actually reduces down the sort of relentless chain of Fireballs.
I mean, it might just be enough anyway. He gets a 5 damage flame cannon, he can Arcane Blast it. Yeah, so this is the best way to do it, because you keep your Fireball and your Frostbolt for the burn. It doesn't actually have to use an Arcane Blast as well, just sacrifices the 1-2, which has little to no value.
Oh, and there's the Alex Strasser. That's actually the best draw for Crane. He needs to do this, and then he's 1 mana off. The Emperor didn't quite hit enough Fireballs to be able to squeeze it all in, but the problem now is if Hallmark expends resources to kill Alex Strasser, which he almost has to, then suddenly, you know, he's using that burn to kill a minion and not his opponent, when the opponent already has Ice Block up and still has a second Ice Block somewhere in the deck.
He should be able to pop the block and kill the Alex. So Arcane Blast and Fireball kill the Alex, and he has a 4 damage Frostbolt, 4 from the Azure Drake, 2 from the Alex Strasser's champion. No, there's champions out as well. So Alex Strasser and her champion are both on the field.
Let's see what happens. Frostbolt's pretty good pick. It slows down Alex Strasser. There's probably not going to be a slight silence in there to, you know, unleash the dragon again. But there's the Fireball straight into ping. All doing it as well as he could. Oh, it gets double spell damage, right?
Yeah, so yeah.
So you can just clear it off. This is really nice.
So Crane is going to need a Frostbolt to win here, or an Ice Block. Oh, Arcane Intellect, so he's going to have to find an Ice Block here.
Ice Lance?
Ice Lance is not enough.
Ping! The last minute ping, but even if he pings and draws, that's all he can do this turn.
Ooh, is it going to get Ice Barrier? It's not going to be it.
No, and there we go. Really crazy match. It looked like Crane was in a really strong position there.
So we were talking about how strong Crane was, but a string of good draws for Hallmark was set him up to get a win there. So he tied us at 1-1. Crane's going to have do some work here. You know, Hallmark kind of showing that, you know, he's got the stuff. Yeah,
and getting a deck like Freeze Mage, he's going to see it again because this is Conquest, of course, but getting the win's really nice. I'm always a bit funny with Freeze Mage. I'm not the biggest fan of that deck, not because I don't think it's a good deck, just because I hate to play against it. And even though he's took a win, he's got to face it again. So, and if you saw, Crane played it as well as he could, to be fair. He just didn't quite get the draws he needed, but Hallmark did exactly what he needed to do, pushed, and you know what? Those Arcane Blasts, they managed to do some work, actually.
So you're a fan of Solitaire? Do you like Solitaire?
No, not a big fan.
So that
that explains my reasoning for Freeze Mage.
So Freeze Mage is still in the lineup. Tempo Mage is now gone. We got a Druid and a Hunter left for Hallmark, and then we have the Freeze Mage and Crane's own Druid to be able to battle against that. So interesting what the next players will pick. I mean, Crane might just go with the Freeze Mage again. He needs to find a win with it. And he's not facing Warrior, so that kind of swinging matchup doesn't exist for him. And he finds the Druid, actually. This is more of a traditional mid-range Druid, so this is going to be a little bit tough for Crane.
Yeah, it's always a bit scary as well, because Freeze Mage isn't a fantastic matchup versus Druid or Hunter. Depending on the Hunter, though, and depending on the Druid, I guess, it's okay. But yeah, you know, Crane's mulligan looks reasonable. There's a Frost Nova, Frostball, and Mad Scientist in there. And looking on Hallmark's side, he has Emperor, Druid of the Claw, a Wild Growth, and a Force of Nature. So the Druids definitely going to build up the board and then go for a combo to burst through all the damage.
Yep, you know, he needs those early minions as well to kind of stabilize with the Freeze Mage. Forsen's a really good pickup as well, help kind of fuel his mid-game, getting him some of those draws, those minions, sorry, a bit faster. But not only that, he might find combo pieces, so it'll let him finish the game faster. The quicker this Druid can take out the Freeze Mage, the better, and Forsen definitely plays that game plan.
Yep, and they're going to see not a terrible start, actually, being able to get 2 secrets out relatively early in the game with 2 Mad Scientists. Loot Horde is going to help him draw. The only issue is, like, he can get the secret out. If he gets Ice Barrier, then he knows what his Mad Scientist is going to pull next, which is really quite instrumental. We'll see how Hallmark's actually going to respond here. He does have never mind Coin Shredder. He does have just Shredder, or he can actually silence the Mad Scientist if he really wants to. But I think he's playing the Shredder because he contests a lot. The drop from the Shredder is really strong, and it either requires both Scientists or Scientist Ping, which means then the Crane's only reduced to 2 mana for this turn, effectively.
This is kind of the ideal start for Crane. He's got those early minions to put pressure on the opponent's minions, because he just wants to keep clearing if he can. Actually, he's going on the aggressive here. I'm surprised he's not trying to clear. So he's actually saying to Hallmark, you know, you're going to have to start dealing with my board. My board's a lot bigger than yours right now. So he's forcing trades from Hallmark instead of trading himself. This is an interesting play, but the Coin Forson is going to hit some excellent stuff. Double Druid the Claw, and a Dr. Boom, and a Silence ready for that Doomsayer. So things are looking pretty nice for Hallmark.
Yeah, it's definitely in a strong position, because Emperor, even though it doesn't have taunt, pretty much has the best taunt in the game, because you cannot leave that card up, especially with the Druid having the hand size he does. Hallmark's, as he said, his hand is super great to have Emperor on the board, and if Crane chooses to Fireball the Emperor or Frostbolt and then trade him with one of the minions, there's still a Shredder on the board he has to deal with, and he doesn't have anything like Frost Nova Doomsayer to like really force an answer like a Silence out of Hallmark to be able to deal with that.
I mean, one thing Crane did interesting was attacking. So I think what he was his plan was, I've got a Frostbolt Fireball. It's quite an aggressive hand. I'll play it aggressively, but you ideally want to thin the secrets out of your deck with the Scientist before you draw them.
Yeah. So
now he's going to be able to clear the board quite nicely and fin his deck for 2 secrets. Arcane Intellect on the back, Frostbolt, and clear the board. So this actually worked out really nice for Crane, but the force in hitting all those cards for Hallmark is going to be a little bit troublesome.
Yeah, he's got both secrets on the board now at 26 health. So having the Ice Barrier, and actually at this point, having the Ice Barrier in hand as well is really strong, because it means that he's going to soak up the 8 damage if this boom hits, or whatever hits him next turn maybe, and then he can actually say, well, I've got another 8 heal here, because Druid has to attack to win the game. It doesn't really have a lot of burn spells straight from hand that go direct to the mage here, but we do see the Cone of Cold for the bombs takes Crane down to 22 and the Doomsayer, so definitely demanding an answer from Hallmark, and he has it.
Well, he has 2 answers here. He could go for the Silence, which is just his 3 mana answer. It looks like, oh, this is great, so you can just do it this way, get rid of that Doomsayer. Another way he could have done it if he wanted, he could have drew the Claw into Charge Form and Wrath. So he does have another answer to the next Doomsayer if he keeps those 2 cards in hand.
I think the idea of not doing that play, and Hallmark actually really good, is not as susceptible to Flame Strike on 7 mana now. He was just about to go into the Mage's turn 7. If he played Druid of the Claw Wrath, then the Flame Strike gets a lot stronger.
And this is where the Druid starts to excel. The Mage has to use kind of damage resources to deal with the board. He had to use an Ice Lance to take out that Dr. Boom. And now the Druid of the Claw is definitely going to cap form.
Yeah.
They are vulnerable to Flame Strike, but you're just trying to push damage as fast as possible.
Yeah, but again, I mean, Hallmark could have played 2 Druids of the Claw, right? Because he has the Innovate, and he used Hero Power anyway, but he didn't. So what he's doing is he's being very careful about how he deals with potential Flame Strike, but we can see Crane doesn't actually have it, and he has a Frost Nova, and he has Ice Barrier that he's looking at in terms of defense. Maybe even an Ice Lance, but the problem is the more spells you use to actually trade away minions with your opponent, the more reliant you are on Archmage Antonidas winning you the game. And the fact that Crane doesn't even have it in hand yet is definitely a problem.
Also the ping here as well. You can still play Ice Barrier, you can still play Frost Nova. But the Ice Barrier gives him 8 health, and there's only 7 damage on the board. With your power, that's 8. So no damage from hand, just with what he's got available to him on board. He'll be able to eat all of the Ice Barrier. So the Frost Nova may not want to be played here. He may have a better opportunity later, where there's a bigger board and more damage coming his way.
Yeah, I think Crane's taking his time now and just trying to work out how far he wants to extend, or how long does he think he can get away with sort of playing a little bit less safe and not really taking away using like Fireball. Because I think he starts with Alexstrasza Fireball in hand. It's a lot of damage, but the second you Fireball one of the minions, you're running out of juice. And there's no card draw as well at the moment in Crane's hand. So Hallmark's in a really strong position.
I mean, the Force of Nature combo is always something that's going to be in the back of a player's mind when facing these Druids. But like Crane's thrown so many resources out to deal with this board, he's now just running out of options. Like, he's going to rely on stuff like Archmage and Antonidas, drawing another Fireball, drawing another Frostball to go with his Alexstrasza to be able to finish him off. But the problem is, as soon as an Ancient Law... Oh, actually, Fireball's a good pick here. But that 2 armor is going to make so much of a difference.
Yeah, I mean, that Alexstrasza was just a snap play from Crane. He has no other option. He has to play offensively or he won't win this matchup. If he starts trying to trade away damage, unless you count like the perfect Antonidas that doesn't ever die, Freeze Mage can only do a certain amount of damage, and that's why it has tough matchups versus, say, Warrior, because you can surpass the 30 max health. But now, Hallmark's got an interesting point. Can he clear? So you'll have 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 17, plus Savage Roar. So he can clear, but can he kill Alexstrasza as well? He does still have Wrath in hand that he can easily cast.
That's a lot of damage.
I'm not going to try and actually count up that damage to see if he can actually do the damage, pop the block, and kill Alexstrasza.
I was counted, then Wrath came in my face and I couldn't see it.
Oh, and there's a Force of Nature in hand as well.
Interesting. So I was counting, and then the Wrath came up, and it kind of blocked the Swordmaster, and made it very awkward for me. It looks like he's just going to go for the trade here. So Fireball's not going to be enough. He's going to need a Frostbolt to be able to finish him off as well. He still has the Ice Block up, so he's still safe. He still has time. Oh, Pyroblast is an amazing draw.
Wow. Right, there we go. So is that just game?
I think so.
Because the Druid can heal for 5 maximum with Ancient of Law. If in a standard Druid deck, I would say. He's on 8, so that'll put him to what, 13 if he drew it, which he hasn't. And then we can see a double Fireball in hand. He's definitely going to seal the deal. And Crane's going to get a win with his Freeze Mage.
With an amazing top deck. I mean,
yeah, that was looking very dicey. The fact that Hallmark dealt with the Alexstrasza, left a huge board still, and had Force of Nature to push, even for the extra 6 damage, is huge. But, top decking straight into Pyroblast. When he has 2 Fireballs in the air, loaded up and ready to go as well, he's pretty insane.
Oh, Crane's going to take it then. 2-1 to Crane. Kind of like one of the favourites of this tournament so far with his competitive history. Hallmark almost had it. He was so close to closing out the game, but just fell a little bit short to a top deck like Pyroblast.
Yeah, I mean, Hallmark played really well. He never overcommitted onto the board because of Flame Strike until he was at the point where, okay, next turn I can pop the block and then potentially kill him with Force of Nature. But it's difficult when Freeze Mage does what it does, right? Alex Straza straight into, and if you got Fireball, then Pyroblast in your hand, Druid's definitely going to have a rough time.
So it looks like we're going to go into the next game. Crane is on match point. This is the potential to go into tomorrow's bracket. And wait a minute.
Weblord.
What?
Okay.
Right, so
that is a card.
Let's talk about this card for a moment. What is this card trying to target? And my thoughts are Mysterious Challenger.
Yeah, that's actually very good.
So if you've got a Weblord down 4 health, can be quite tricky for the Paladin to deal with without the right weapons and without having board presence. Stalling Mysterious Challenger to turn 8, that's too slow for Secret Paladin.
Yeah.
They need it. They need it on 6.
And also, even a little bit earlier on, it's a 1/4. It's a Paladin token eater.
Token Slayer.
Yeah, it's just a token slayer. And I'll be interested to see if he actually keeps this. No, he does throw it away. Okay, because he has his own Darnassus Aspirant. Because it could have been that sort of counter pick to for his opponent's Darnassus Aspirant, maybe to try and slow that down, because the ability actually is a battle cry, so it would have had an effect.
So this was looking pretty standard until Lepanome.
Yeah. Why do we keep getting surprised by these Crane picks?
And we were talking about how Druid has kind of 2 archetypes now. It has the mid-range and it has the aggro. And we saw the Weblord, and I actually had the list here. And it's there's not much more surprising than that. The Weblord was a big enough surprise. I can't believe I didn't spot that when I was looking at the list.
Well, look at this hand. On one side, you've got all the ramp you could ever want, but nothing to ramp into, whereas Crane has a bit of a crazy start, and he is going to go straight into the Aspirant and open up more options for him next turn. And it's the bulkier minion. He might want to save Living Roots as maybe a removal, because the 1/1s are easily cleaned up by Druid. And the Lepanome, again, will be cleaned up by Hero Power probably. But Hallmark going straight into a Shredder. I mean, what a draw when you've got this kind of hand.
And Saber might be a good way to answer the Shredder. I mean, it is an aggro deck. There is maybe a merit to just ignoring it and going on the offensive.
Yeah, there's another option where he could live in Roots for 2 and then Hero Power it down. But then he has to hope that what comes out is easily dealt with, or the Darnassus Aspirant doesn't care about it.
I mean, this is the less aggressive play. This is going for the trades in the early game and then trying to put the pressure on later with stuff like Fel Reaver, Savage Combatant. It looks like he's going for the aggressive play, which I really like. Because if you're going to play an aggro deck, you start hitting the face, okay?
Yeah, exactly. He's chosen the route where you just ignore, to a certain extent, what your opponent's doing, because none of the trades are favourable. He could either have all these minions on the board, or he could have whatever's come out of Shredder against him, which, isn't going to do enough. Hallmark, again, not a bad draw into the Shade, straight into Innovate and the Darnassus Aspirant. Hallmark is only on 1 card, and are we going to see a Savage draw this turn? There's definitely potential, because with the board you're against, can you guarantee you're going to be ahead on the board enough to actually get more use out of Savage Draw than you're already going to get?
I do actually like Savage, because Savage Draw, this is where Crane can start trading with Savage Draw. He could trade one of the 1/1s in the Aspirant. He can hit face with the 2 damage to clear the Shredder, then use the other 1/1 to clear what comes out of the Shredder, and then he's still stuck with a 3/2. Oh, we can actually just Hero Power Lepanome now as well.
Yeah, that worked out really well. Getting a 2/1 from Shredder when you have a Hero Power that does 1 damage is pretty nice. Pretty nice.
I know the trading game, Crane was really aggressive at the start, but now Hallmark has 1 card in hand as a Druid. You can start trading now. You've got 3 cards in hand. You've got Keeper of the Grove coming up. You may draw into a 5-drop, and mid-range Druid can be known to whiff very hard on their draws, getting stuff like Force of Natures in hands when they don't need them, Savage draws when they don't need them. So this could be a good opportunity.
Or a Shredder when you do need it.
And a Keeper. So he's got the best of both worlds here. He's got 2 choices. He can clear and get a 2/4 and can start trading, or he can just drop the Shredder.
Yeah, and one of the problems actually with Crane's turn 4 is that he probably kind of wants to keep it for silence from a taunt, say Druid of the Claw,
Yeah, for
because you're playing such an aggressive deck that you need to be able to almost guarantee pushing through, any taunt, actually. There's even Druids that play Sludge Belchers now and again, you see in the list, so there's always a chance that you can see that kind of taunt, and not having an answer to it and having to actually physically trade your minions into it is horrendous for this deck.
And Ancient of War is another card which was popular during the Patron days. Maybe not be as popular as it once was, but that's going to be a very hard card for Druid to punch through without stuff like Savage Roar and Keeper of the Grove. But this is just too tasty.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Because the problem is the Shade's only going to get more of a problem, so definitely just taking it out there is pretty nice.
But look at Hallmark's hand. Double Wild Growth, so clunky.
Whoa!
Ooh, that's
okay.
A good draw.
Yeah. Innovate into Boom on turn 5 is never normally that bad.
One of these god top decks from Crane, he top decked that Pyroblast to win the game last match, and then Innovate to get a turn 5 Dr. Boom against a guy who has double Wild Growth.
Yeah, I mean, that one draw again has potentially won Crane this match. I mean, not to speak too soon, we could, anything could still happen, but with double Wild Growth that won't draw him cards because he's not at maximum mana, they're just dead at the moment, and the Keeper of the Grove is not going to do much against a 7/7. There's a chance that so he's not going to face tank. He could have put everything into the Boom and face tanked and hope that the other two cards in Crane's hand aren't going to be too much of an issue because he has Keeper of the Grove, but this isn't too great, to be honest.
I think
he needs to draw a big game on it, right?
I think the issue is, if he did do that, it's not a winning play, is it? You're just player not to lose. And he probably knows this is an aggressive Druid deck now. So he's going to run out of time. He's on a clock. I think he just has to take a few risks here and try and get as much value from this board as he can until hopefully next turn he may draw something that'll be able to protect him, like a Sludge Belcher, Ancient of War, Druid of Claw, whichever taunts he's actually packing in this deck.
Yeah. And what is Crane gonna top deck something pretty useful again? We're about to find out. The Wild Growths get put down, he may as well ramp up, there's nothing else. And a Web Lord. Now the Druid cards that are choose ones aren't battle cries, sorry, are they?
No.
So they won't actually get affected by this Web Lord. So that's a bit of a dull draw. The only benefit for Crane is that it's another minion on the board that can get buffed by Savage Roar.
Oh, and a Parrot as well.
I swear I get Parrot more than anything out of Shredder. I'm pretty confident. I want to see the stats. Blizzard, send me the stats on my Shredders. All I see is Parrot.
I always get that 4-3 guy who, if he gets hit, you take the damage.
Oh, yeah.
And then you just have a warrior like shield slam it for 26 or something because they've gained so much armor. It's like, come on, man. I don't take 26 damage to the face from a shield slam. Oh, Wrath does come down and destroys that. Sweet, no, it's gone. So
Yeah, well, I was like, just give it 1 second. I swear Blizzard said they fixed this, and they have to a large extent, so that's not too bad. The Emperor's going to come down, but on a 1-card hand, when that card isn't something hyper important, it's not going to do too much work, and the Savage Roar is going to clear up this game for Crane.
with a hero power and a Keeper of the Grove to back up, so it looks like Crane is actually going to take this 3-1 in the end. Hallmark did put up a really good fight, but some excellent top decks from Crane did allow him to win it. How did you feel that match went overall? I think Hallmark fell short to Crane's luck a little bit. I think he looked too far. He looked so far ahead in that Druid game. Crane was literally looking for like top deck Frostbolt, top deck Pyro. Anything else probably would have been a little bit too slow.
Yeah, I think that in the last match we just saw, I maybe would have liked the trade because he could have actually ran the Shredder, the Keeper of the Grove, and used his other Keeper to kill off the 7/7. Because in such an aggressive deck, especially when your Savage Roar's a problem, leaving a 7/7 on the board for just 1 turn and be able to freely hit like face is a big problem. But overall, Hallmark played really well. It was a really tough one. He pretty much lost to that Pyroblast. The game was really close up until that point, and again drawing the Innovate, because Crane pretty much had dead turns up until turn 7. Otherwise, if that Innovate didn't come out, Crane didn't have anything, and Hallmark was looking really strong.
And let's not forget double Wild Growth against an aggressive Druid deck not working. I mean, his hand had so much ramp, it was looking decent, but Crane's starting hand was so aggressive that he didn't have time to utilize those Wild Growths and start building on anything. And it was sad for Hallmark. It got to the point where he's just like, Wild Growth.
Yeah,
sigh.
I mean, the thing is, the guy's good. You know, he's made it through a gigantic bracket to top 8, and that's an achievement in itself. And I think if he goes back through the VODs, watches each game, he'll realise that he played pretty well, and Crane got the good end of the stick in terms of luck. So, you know, he can't be too upset. Obviously, it's going to be a shame he's out in round 1 of this top 8, but he's out to a strong player that, you know, the luck was on his side a little bit there.
Alright, so Crane advances to tomorrow, where he'll be playing in the semi-finals. We have 3 more games coming for you this evening. Up next, we actually have, I will check, Born to Win versus Millennium's Alex. I don't know anything about Born to Win other than he was born to win, apparently.
Well, yeah.
And Alex is not a player I'm familiar from Millennium. I think Maverick was was Maverick in Millennium?
I think at one point, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll have that game coming up very short. We're going to go to a quick break, so don't go anywhere. We'll have some more Hearthstone for you.